Welcome, everyone, to a sold-out evening of American Masters tribute to Susan Lacey and Michael Cantor. To a wonderful film by Bob Hercules and Rita Watt-Coburn. They will be here for a Q&A afterwards. And I just want to say that this is the 9th year of this documentary film festival, which started out as a pipsqueak in 2008 with 4 films in like a half a day. And we're now 4 days. We have 25 films this year, features mostly. And we're really proud of the growth. It's not your typical festival. It's a much more, I like to think of it as a boutique festival with very hand-selected films. And from the feedback we get, people just say they love it. Someone said in the middle of Thanksgiving Day, she thinks about coming to the festival. It makes her happy. So I like that. For those of you who don't know me, and I don't think there are very many, I'm Jackie LaFaro, the director of the festival. And thank you. Thanks. I don't want to take up much more time tonight. I do want to thank 2 of our sponsors whose financial support has been invaluable to us, and that is Claudia Pilato and the Bridgehampton National Bank, and Brown Harris Stevens for our Audience Award. Thank you very much. Next year is our 10th year. Please mark your books. November 30th, December 1, 2, 3. We'll be back with a great program, a big anniversary, not 30-year anniversary, but a big anniversary. So now I'd like to get on with the evening and introduce to you Susan Margolin, who is the former head of New Video Docurama Films, acclaimed independent distribution company, and she now just founded St. Mark's Production with a focus on documentaries and distribution strategy. Susan is going to take the evening from here, so enjoy all of it. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Great to see a lot of friends in the audience tonight. I hope you don't mind. I wrote down some notes, only about 50 pages of credits for our illustrious honorees tonight, and that doesn't even crack the surface. So this evening we're honoring the achievements of the groundbreaking American Masters series. It's been called the best biographical series ever to appear on American television. Its vast archive includes more than 220 portraits of America's most influential and enduring writers, musicians, visual and performing artists, activists, scientists, and innovators. Over the past 30 years, the series has earned over 71 Emmy nominations, yielding 28 Emmys. 10 for Outstanding Nonfiction Series, 5 for Outstanding Nonfiction Specials, 12 Peabodys, an Oscar, 3 Grammys, 2 Producers Guild Awards, and many other honors. We're so fortunate tonight to have Susan Lacey and Michael Cantor here with us. Susan created the series in 1986 and served as executive producer from '86 to 2012. A legend in the industry, Susan began her public television career in 1979. She worked as a program exec at Great Performances and American Playhouse prior to launching American Masters. Susan, we'll be talking a little bit about, the groundbreaking and award-winning work that she's done, but I think it's fair to say that she's, one of the industry's great luminaries, and we're so pleased to be honoring her tonight. Since leaving the series in 2012, she formed her own production company called Pentimento Productions, and now she's focused on directing and producing films on Steven Spielberg, Jane Fonda, Ralph Lauren, all part of her multi-picture deal with HBO. What do you do for an encore? I think I might. Her successor at the series, Michael Cantor, was an inspired choice to fill Susan's shoes. He joined in 2014. A longtime award-winning producer and filmmaker, Michael created the acclaimed six-part series Broadway and American Musical, which won a Primetime Emmy, Make 'em Laugh, The Funny Business of America, hosted by Billy Crystal and narrated by Amy Sedaris, and Broadway musicals A Jewish Legacy, narrated by Joel Grey, which won a Peabody. Now they're both here to tell us about their experience with the series and the new directions that the series is going into. Please, a round of applause for these two luminaries. Susan, if you wouldn't mind coming up. We have an award, anniversary tribute for 30 years of outstanding documentaries presented to Susan Lacey.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to say anything? Or? No, okay. And also for Michael, thank you. A tribute for I think we can maybe grab our chairs now, and if you guys want to put that. Tell us a little bit about how the series came about and how it was created, Susan, back in '86.
Well, it was actually a germ of an idea in my head starting in '83. Can you hear? Is this on?
You got it? Okay.
What grade?
First of all, I want to say something about Jackie. Jackie? Yes. She's a force of nature.
That's true.
And the building of this festival is really in her hands, and she's done an amazing job. So.
Yes.
Many years ago, I read a letter that John Steinbeck had written to John F. Kennedy. And I think he was applauding him for starting the Kennedy Center. So somewhere in the 60s. And the letter said, a nation may be honored by its statesmen. And defended by its military, but it's almost always remembered for its arts. And that struck a chord in me that kind of never went away, partly because I was raised in a family of musicians and in a home with tremendous love and appreciation for the arts. I'm very grateful to my parents for that. Yeah. Good luck for parents, right? I read all the childhood classics and everything, but I was also given the lives of the artists to read. And we went through picture books of art, and music was part of our life every day. So when I landed, after many years, well, I studied all of this in college. I was an American Master's major. I did a lot of graduate work in it. I did my dissertation on Frank O'Hara and the abstract expressionists. So this is where my lifeblood really was. So when I landed at Channel 13 in 1979, and I got the chance to work with Jack Venza, my mentor, and the Great Performances series, I thought I died and gone to heaven. And we were doing amazing things. We were doing, dance programs and theater programs and great symphonic orchestra. We did those 16 hours at the Ring, which I thought PBS was going to kill us for. But and one day I said, we've just done this amazing ballet that we worked with Balanchine to create for television. I want to know more about George Balanchine. I want the world to know more about Balanchine. I want the world to know more about Eugene O'Neill and Jerome Robbins. And so I said, I think we should start a series about artists, the people behind the works that we're seeing. And I really had a very clear idea of what I wanted this to be. I really wanted this to sort of not be purely biographical, I wanted this to be about looking at the work through a lens of the social and political and economic climates of the time in which it was created. American artists in general really had to carve out their own territory in the world culture, and there were amazingly rich and dramatic stories to be told. It's always about creating something new or reflecting who we were, fighting the trends, inherently dramatic and rich stories. So I thought this was a great idea, and everybody would think it was a great idea too. That's not what happened. Actually, nobody thought it was a good idea, except for Jack Benza. And I mean, really, it was astounding. But I realized later that the reason for that is there had never been a series like this. So when there had been an occasional biography of an artist, Picasso or something like that, it would appear, but it would not necessarily appear in prime time. When filmmakers, who always have a passion to make a film about something that means something to them, would cobble it together with their own money and credit cards and maybe a little grant from the Ford Foundation, it would get buried in the middle of the night or Sunday morning. So the prevailing theory was that nobody cared about this kind of filmmaking. Nobody cared about these stories. And I said, well, it's just this form follows function, whatever. I mean, of course nobody knows about it because they don't know it's on, and you're not promoting it. And trust me, I believe there will be an audience for this. So I just kept at it. I actually never believed it wouldn't happen, because I had such a strong belief that we needed to make a library of American cultural history while we had the means to do it and the people around to tell their stories. Not that everybody was still around, but technology was there to do this, and it wasn't being done. So, I don't know, by hook or by crook, despite everybody saying, sounds like a golf series, or, that actually got that, actually somebody at PBS actually said if this was such a good idea, it already would have happened. And that's actually how new things have to come from such a core belief that you just don't let up. So I didn't let up. And the first series went on the air in 1986. I always knew I wanted these to be richly told stories, real films made by the best possible filmmakers that were not Reader's Digest, recaps or Encyclopedia Britannica facts, but genuine films that really looked at how the life of this artist and the times came together to create something astounding and lasting. And amazingly, this was really important. Jack Benza said to me, just don't let him put it on except if it's in prime time, because it won't last. It has to be in common carriage, which was really important. It's still really important. Common carriage is the time when all the stations have to actually carry the same program at the same time. They don't always do it, but to be in prime time to be in common carriage was really important. And PBS still didn't really think there was an audience for it, so I said, why don't we put it on in the summer? There's nothing else on in the summer. It's all repeats. Remember, this was only 3 networks in PBS at that time. And it went on in the summer. And it was amazing because the critics loved it from the beginning because they were so bored with everything else they had to write about. And there were real meaty programs. And so we made all the covers of the television guides, and the series was launched surprisingly to everybody with a really big, surprising, strong audience. So there we went. I have to say that I never in a million years thought it would last 30 years. Every single year, I sort of breathed life into it again and hoped and prayed that we would get the funding for yet another year. And this little engine that could eventually became its own institution.
Quite a tribute to you and your team's ability to keep it going. Michael, tell us what makes an American master in 2017.
Wow, that's Good question. Just by way of background, I got first involved in American Masters in around 2000 when I directed some pieces on Quincy Jones, and Susan, I came and said, you know, I've done these sort of shorter pieces for cable television. Could we do the real deal on Quincy? And I'll get to that question, but basically in the editing of that film, Susan would come in the edit room and say, it's really interesting, but can you bring more poetry to it? And that really always stuck with me, that the film, it needed not to be a television program, but a film with its own poetry and rhythm and so forth. And I think now in 2017, with all these different types of media out there, short form things you see on your phone and so on, I think we all pride ourselves on what's sort of a deep dive into these stories and taking the time. It was a joke, actually, when I got started on the Quincy Jones project, for various reasons, because I'd worked with him before, we could finish it quicker than I think any other American Masters had ever been done. I think it was 8 months. And I used to joke with my wife that if you can gestate a child in 9 months, you should be able to make a documentary. But it never works that way. And I think the film you'll see later tonight, and you'll hear from Bob and Rita, took something like 4 to 5 years. So in answer to your question, in 2017, we're interested in continuing that deep dive look at these major artists and cultural leaders. And we're interested in placing them wherever we can, in theaters, on the internet, streaming, wherever people can see them, because they're worth watching.
What's so interesting to me, knowing you both a bit, is that you're both scholars of American culture, and yet you're tirelessly in pursuit of your stories, both of you, and master storytellers. Can you share with us some of your favorite, or sort of challenges in getting those stories to screen? I know, Susan, there's a legend about a Paul Simon show that maybe you can share with us a bit.
Well, after 6 seasons of American Masters, PBS canceled the series. And it's a whole long story about why they didn't mean they really wanted to, but so 3 weeks after they canceled it, you don't even know this.
No.
The woman who ran PBS at the time took me to breakfast. She said, we really don't want to cancel the series. I had to cancel it because I had to show I was going to do something new. But we do great work. We want you to continue to do it. Could you just please not make any more programs about like John Cage and the group theater, because nobody cares about them except in New York and Los Angeles, and the rest of the country's lost. So I said, what am I supposed to do? She said, well, just make something really amazingly powerful and we'll go from there. So that's actually when I decided I really wanted to start to make films, but I wasn't confident enough to tackle it on my own. So I worked with 2 different filmmakers, both of whom are here tonight, by the way, Nigel Noble and Susan Steinberg. And Nigel and I, well, I didn't know that I was going to get to do Paul Simon. I thought, I get to do Paul Simon. So we went to see him, and we talked about everything except making this film, and sort of at the end of it, he said, okay, I think that's okay. And by the way, I'm going on this world tour. I think it'd be nice if that were documented. So I came back to the station and I said, I have good news and bad news. Good news is I got Paul Simon, it's exclusive. Bad news is I have to be in China in 6 weeks, and it's going to cost over $1 million. Anyway, somehow or another, this got pulled off. And it was one of the most astounding films that I can remember ever being involved with, because we really were on this tour with this major artist, and we didn't quite know what was going to happen, and we were surprised at every turn about what happened. And I remember specifically in China, we got to China, and we weren't absolutely sure that we were going to get to be, we went to Hong Kong, we weren't absolutely sure we'd be able to get to go to China, because 6 weeks wasn't long enough to get a visa. So this guy in the hotel got us this group visa, and he said, this will get you and your crew on the train, but I'm not sure it's going to get you off. So we did an interview with Paul Simon on the way to China on the train, just in case. And we did get off, and we didn't know that they were following us the whole time. But one of the things he said in the trains is, there hasn't been a concert in China since 1945. So I don't even know if they know my music. And we got there, and we amazingly found out, I mean, this incredible concert, that not only did they know it, they knew it all the words in Chinese. And the beginning of the concert, the communist officials told everybody that they couldn't dance or anyway show they were having a good time. Certainly not light candles and do all that stuff or matches. But they hadn't counted on the fact that there were all these people coming from Hong Kong who didn't have to listen to this. So they started dancing, and all of a sudden all these little Chinese people got up and started dancing and having a good time, and and you could just see the moment that they said, we're going to let this go. We're not going to let this turn into Tiananmen Square. It was an amazing moment about the power of music to unite people. And that's what that film was about. And we had all kinds of other things that happened, including a murder and whatever, but I'll leave it at that because this will get too long. But it was fun. It was one of the most fun films.
Well, my experience, I've just been with American Masters now 2.5 years, and as I sort of hinted at earlier, one of the really interesting challenges is to put films in theaters. And this year, we have 3 films that are currently under consideration for the Academy shortlist. The Maya Angelou film that you'll see momentarily, by Sidney Lumet, which, when I walked in here, it blew my mind. Sidney had directed a play in this very space. And that was a project that Susan had started years back with a filmmaker who shot 18 hours on Sidney Lumet and then passed away recently. And through luck and skill and so forth, Nancy Bursky, the filmmaker, took that material and shaped this beautiful film. The third of those films is the Norman Lear, Just Another Version of You, which aired on PBS October 25th and is now available on Netflix. And if you're a member on Channel 13, it's the membership video on demand. So I guess I'm blanking on the exact nature of the question, but the key, I think, for us is to make sure that you find people who trust you, as Paul Simon did on that train ride, as well as finding the right partners, because with deep-pocketed folks out there who can make films, Netflix original films, and not worry at all about the cost, public television is all about making sure, A, that people trust you, and B, that you have the right partners so you can do it.
That's great.
I think trust is really the biggest factor here. And we earned that. We earned that by making good films. And I remember when we did 60 Minutes, it took me a while to convince Don Hewitt to let us come in and be a fly on the wall there to tell that story. But after the film was finished, he said, I never thought to say no. This is like getting a Pulitzer Prize in television, that world. And we earned that trust. We really earned it by trusting the artists and trusting their work and not making the films sensationalist, but really exploring the work in a serious way, which is what all artists want. They don't want to be frittered away with gossip and headlines, and they want somebody who's going to look at their work and take it seriously. And that's what we did, and I think we earned that so much over the years. And you earned it with Quincy. We've all earned, it was a long haul, though.
And let me just throw out one other thing which we've been trying to do in the last couple of years, which is to take this amazing collection of interviews that Susan and her colleagues accumulated and created over the past 30 years, and we're digitizing them and making a digital archive that will be interactive. We'll map them. So if Jules Feiffer was talking about something and you typed in Jules Feiffer and you wanted to learn about whatever he was talking about, it'll take you right to that moment in the interview. And in addition to that, we're taking, while we're building that digital archive, we're grabbing audio bites from those interviews, and we've created the American Masters podcast. So for those of you, I'd never listened to a podcast before we created this, but it's sort of like a DVR for radio. It's a way to listen to things in your car or wherever you want to listen to them. And we've put out Lena Horne talking about breaking through in Hollywood, or Gloria Steinem when she first saw a Marilyn Monroe movie and how it shocked her. So that's the legacy that Susan built through these amazing interviews that we're trying to make sure everyone can see.
I knew he was the right guy for the job.
Oh, when I got there, I thought this is the most valuable thing, not only that American Masters owns, but that WNET owns. I mean, Ray Charles and Lena Horne, they're people who aren't around to tell those stories anymore, and we have them. So let's make sure everyone can access them.
Well, that was always the point of this, and I never knew. I remember at the time, I thought we're going to make a library of American cultural history, and I literally saw it as a library on the shelves, along with the great books. There would be all these, VHS tapes, because that's how long ago this was. And I'm so happy that that's finally happening with this, because the technology allows that to happen.
That's it. We can bitch and moan a lot about current technology, but here is one way that having the technology is caught up, and we can use it in this interesting way.
Great. Access is key. I think we can take a couple of questions if anybody has questions for our honorees. Anybody?
I'd like to know, what was your very first American Masters? What was the very first one?
It was called Private Conversations, and it was a kind of fly-on-the-wall look with Arthur Miller and Dustin Hoffman at the making of
Death of a Salesman.
Death of a Salesman for television. And it was an extraordinary film made by Christian Blackwood, who sadly is no longer with us, but he made a beautiful, wonderful film. And it was an unusual film, actually, to start the series, but I loved it so much. And we had these two great masters in it, and so it was great. That was the first year of the series, and we actually had 15 films.
And you had a host, right?
Yeah. Originally, PBS thought that it needed a host, so we got Joanne Woodward to be our host. And she was great and wonderful, lovely to work with, but it was costly, and to have a writer, and you had to write these little things, and then it would sort of say all the stuff you were about to see in the film, and I got irritated with it and said, we don't really need to do this, it's taking time away from the film. So after the first season was so successful, and we were going into the second season, I said, let's don't do this anymore. Give us more time for the film. We don't need to do it. We're just sort of repeating what's going to be in the film. And but that first year was a host.
I think the one that struck me as the most personal and the most painful and most moving was the one on James Baldwin, which I never really recovered from seeing, because said so much and was so perfect and so honest and revealed in its really unwinding way so much about him and so much about the world we all still live in.
Well, that was an interesting situation, which some people here will probably know about, and it's actually come full circle today. We started that film with Al Maisels, who was going to make a film about following Jimmy to go around the South, where he was going to write a book about the children of the slain black leaders, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and then Jimmy died. And Al and I had lunch, and he said, I don't make films about dead people. And I said, he's a great verite, cinema verite filmmaker. And I said, I know that, but I still really want to do this. And so we made this beautiful film, which I agree with you is one of my favorites. Everybody always asks me, who did you love the most that you made a film about? And I say James Baldwin. And I never met him. I fell in love with his face. I fell in love with his oratory. I fell in love with his humanity. And his picture sits in my office. Full circle, there's an incredible documentary right now called I Am Not Your Negro, which is about Jimmy's journey to tell this story And I haven't actually seen it yet. My daughter was involved in helping make it happen, but I hear it's one of the greatest documentaries. Anybody seen it? Yeah. So
Great
it's
power.
funny how those things come around.
It's also a perfect segue to the film you're about to see because James Baldwin and Dr. Maya Angelou were very close, and Jules Pfeiffer appears in it as well. So I don't know if you have any final questions, but that is literally the perfect segue to this next film.
We're good? Okay. And without further ado,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Big hand for our honorees.